Welcome everyone to the Be Kind podcast. My name is Joe Kirkner and I'm joined today by Diane. And just a reminder, Be Kind podcast is part of the Animal Advocates mission to create a more compassionate world for all living creatures. Hi Diane, how are you today?
I'm good, Joe. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Happy Easter, by the way. We're recording this on Easter Sunday and is the, I think, loneliest Easter Sunday ever for everyone, if you happen to celebrate that holiday.
Right, which I do not, but that I understand. It's rough in many ways for a lot of people. So yeah, it's hard. We're social creatures, so certainly holidays like this especially can be, I think, very, very challenging for a lot of people. But we're in a whole new world right now at the moment, so I think everybody's challenged in one way or another. But yes.
Yeah, certainly. Finding ways to adapt. My family actually had a Google Hangout call where we all saw each other, which was kind of cool. And since I live 3 hours away from them, super convenient.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, we've been tossing around. I've seen this with some of my friends. I don't know what you call it, but let's say you find a parking lot where a huge parking lot where no one's going to be, and you decide to meet for lunch. Of course, this be weather permitting, but you kind of make your vehicles in like a circle, either backing them in if you have a truck or an SUV, or maybe pulling in forward. And then everyone kind of sits on or in their vehicles facing one another, and you can actually, obviously social distancing, but still be together in a group without still following the social distancing rule. So that's something I'm hoping, actually, to be honest, I'm hoping we won't have to use, but it's another possibility for some people, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds kind of awkward to me, but if you're that desperate for a little social interaction, I suppose to each their own, right?
That's right. And some people are. And, personally, I'm actually an introvert. And so this is probably not as challenging for me as it is for someone who's an extrovert. And and all that means is, of course, an extrovert gets a lot of their energy from being around people or recharges in that way. So if that's the case, that might be an option, I mean, sure, it could be awkward, I suppose, but I don't know. We'll see.
In a few weeks, we may all be doing that. I'll be eating my words.
Well, like I said, let's hope we don't have to use it.
I always like to ask guests how they've been veganing out recently, just kind of something vegan and unique or interesting they've been exploring, taking part in, thinking about food, books, movies, music, whatever. I've been trying to stay away from mainstream news for obvious reasons, and I've been looking at more vegan news outlets like Veg News and Plant-Based News, which still have a lot of the coverage. So I've been trying to be more discerning with vegan news outlets. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've tried to discipline myself to only look at the news and responsible news outlets, mainstream, like you said, once a day. And there are things that I do need to know that I will pick up. For instance, when I am actually going to be able to, as a self-employed person, apply for unemployment. And so, otherwise, it's probably not great for us to take a lot of that in. And so the one thing I have been doing, and are you familiar with Colleen Patrick Goudreau, Joe?
I am not.
Oh, wow. Okay. So she's basically one of my heroes. She's a vegan author, animal advocate. She is incredible. I've learned so much from her. And for anybody listening, if you've not ever looked at her work, I highly, highly recommend it. And she has a vegan podcast she's been doing since 2006 called Food for Thought. And the way I found her was when I became an ethical vegan. I was already vegan, but was for health reasons. But after I watched Cowspiracy in August of 2015, the call to action for that movie at that time was actually Colleen Patrick Goudreau's 30-day vegan challenge. And it's been incredible. And I went back from the beginning, 2006, and listened to every episode and kind of fell off the wagon, I guess, for a little bit. And so that's what I've been doing, Joe, is going back and listening to some of her podcasts, because she's very articulate. She's very intelligent. She's very compassionate. I'm sure she'd be the first to say that this is not true, but it always seems like she knows exactly what to say for any given situation. And so you can really learn so much from her. She's incredible. So that's been kind of fun to kind of pick back up on that. So that's what I've been doing.
She sounds like one of those people who, whenever you have that vegan debate with somebody and after it you're in the shower and you think, I should have said that. She's
Right.
probably the person who thinks that while she's in the debate itself.
Oh, yeah. But, she gives you like such simple, she has this whole series. This is what I'm on right now, is let's see, it's called 10 Effective Strategies for Communicating. And it's not only with this, it's pretty much true for like communicating anytime, but specifically for situations where somebody is giving you some pushback about, veganism or anything like that. She really gives you practical things that are easy to implement and easy to remember. Some of them, there's so many, I call them CPG isms, that I've picked up that have been tremendously helpful to me. And so it's been nice to revisit that for me.
You already touched on your vegan journey a little bit, but how did you come to start practicing the vegan lifestyle?
I basically, and this is literally the thought process I remember, Joe, when I was 17 years old in 1980, decided it would be really cool to be a vegetarian. So that's what I did. But the interesting thing was the lifelong stomach aches I'd been plagued with overnight went away. Then eventually, so when I say vegetarian, I was still consuming, the byproduct of a hen's menstrual cycle. Never, ever. I told my mom apparently when I was like 5, I don't like milk and I'm not drinking it, which of course makes sense because it's when you stop producing lactase. But anyway, still ate cheese occasionally, then eventually introduced, chickens and turkeys, and eventually pig products. Never, ever went back to any sort of cow flesh. And then in 2012, I watched Forks Over Knives, and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I even eating any animal products? This is awful. So at that point, I considered myself vegan, but it was strictly for health reasons. And so, of course, what I see is that when you're vegan for health reasons, it's really easy to go, well, I can just have this egg this one time, or I can just have whatever. And that's what was happening. Then, like I said, when I watched Cowspiracy in 2015, that was it. There was no looking back. And then when I found Colleen Patrick Goudreau and started listening to those podcasts and found out the horrors. I mean, a lot of them are hard to listen to. I mean, I was in tears many times, but it's, it needed to happen. And so, yeah. And so she's got this whole series of the 10 things, the stages you go through when you stop eating animals and awaken. And one of them is, you want to do something. And that's how I came to, animal advocacy, is thanks to her, suggestion. You can't, what's your choices? You get frustrated and angry, or you try to do something. And it's whatever calls out to you. It's probably going to be something different for everyone, right? But another one of her sayings is, just because you can't do everything, don't do nothing, do something, anything.
Yeah, I think those are all great ideas, and I love the idea of something's better than nothing. I think a lot of times we let perfection get in the way of good, which is a huge problem I see in not just this movement, but most movements in general, is people always struggle for that Plato ideal and never get there for obvious reasons, and then they just kind of throw their hands up and say, oh, well.
Yeah, none of it matters. Right, exactly. No, and I mean, if you look at specifically to veganism, it's not black and white, and it's not, the definition from the way I understand it. I'm not going to recite it verbatim because I don't know it, but it's something like, whenever possible and to the best of my ability, I will not, use any animal products. So it's not perfect. I mean, I still have some shoes that have leather. It's not practical for me to throw them away. I don't feel great about it, but you know what I mean? It's whenever possible and to the best of my ability.
This is a nice transition into what you really want to talk about today, but it comes down towards compassion, not just for animals, but also for yourself and others who are struggling to be the best they can be in the movement.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I can't know. I have no way of knowing how much you've encountered this, but I certainly have, and I see it all the time. Certainly on social media, but face to face, people have said things like this. And I thought about it this morning, and I think it's more important than ever because we need, of all times, we need compassion for all beings right now. But have you ever had anyone say to you, or have you ever seen, or maybe you've said it yourself, and this is not a judgment, not judging, this is just an observation. But yeah, I'm vegan because I hate people. People suck. I only want to be around animals. People suck. I hate people. And you know what? If that's how you feel, that's valid. But I don't think people realize what they're doing. And I think that if we are asking others to be compassionate to animals and all beings, keep in mind, of course, us as humans, last time I checked, we are animals. Shouldn't we widen our circle of compassion to include all beings, including other people that we don't necessarily agree with? I think we're spreading the wrong message when we do that. I hate people. I don't want to be around people. And it's almost so, it seems like it's so well accepted that it's said, jokingly or nonchalantly. But I don't think what people realize is that's the frequency and energy that you're vibrating out to the world. It's Martin Luther King quote: hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Yeah, I think one of my previous guests said something along the lines of you catch more flies with honey. And when you alienate yourself from people like that, where you say, I'm separate from all you, I'm going to go off here in my own little world, all the non-vegans out there say, wait a minute, I like my little world. I like the people in my life. I don't want to be separated from society and the love people I love and all other people out there. Why would I want to be vegan, give up everything? I could see maybe giving up food, but now I have to give up all my social relationships, all my thoughts and feelings towards others, and it really just makes it an us versus them rather than a we're all in this
Right.
together and do what we can.
Right. And I think it's real easy for us to look at someone, and not so much in person or face to face, but certainly on social media. And so this is just an example. This is when I decided I wanted to maybe that I maybe had a topic for this podcast. And it was, I personally, if I know that someone posts videos of animal abuse and atrocities, I can't do it. It's too upsetting for me. I won't look. But it just so happened that several weeks ago, before I knew what I was looking at, I'd already seen it. And it was a video of a man. He had this baby calf. He was kind of straddling, trying to force feed this bottle, and the calf was resisting, and he was punching the baby calf in the head and yelling at it, hold still, you A word. And it was awful. And so then you scroll down and look at the comments. That person needs to be punched in the head and force fed. This person, he's awful, he needs to die. Just hate and vitriol. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. If you think about it, and this isn't, of course, obviously in no way condoning, it was awful what he was doing. But you have to be able to separate someone's actions from that person. And why would somebody act like that? We have to take a step back and say, why would someone act like that? And you have to know that if somebody is lashing out with that sort of abuse and hate, that has to mean that they are troubled. They're experiencing fear and sadness or frustration or anxiety. And should we not have compassion for them? How awful must they feel to act in that manner? They must be suffering terribly, that person. So shouldn't we have compassion for that person rather than wishing the same awful thing on them.
Yeah, we're all products of our environments and upbringings and our cultures we're raised in. So if someone's raised in an environment that leads to such negative and atrocious actions, you're right. I can't even imagine what that poor person's gone through. And
Right.
even
We have no idea. We have no idea.
but even on a smaller, more I don't want to say reasonable, but on a smaller scale or less extreme scale, it's when you see people who are just eating meat in general, like going to McDonald's or eating eggs or eating steaks or things like that, and you see these vegans hating on them or wearing fur and they're pouring blood all over them because they're wearing a fur jacket or something like that.
Yes.
And it's whole bad, and the vegans have such strong negative emotions, almost hate in some cases towards these people, and it's just maybe they just haven't realized yet. They've never been confronted by these ideas, or no one's approached them in a way that would make them want to think otherwise. They just had people pour blood on them, and why the hell would you want to be friends with those people?
Right. Right. And okay, so here's another CPGism. This one has always stuck with me. And so I didn't ask you, Joe, and I haven't heard. I've listened to not all of the podcasts, but some. What's your vegan journey been like? How long have you been vegan?
Let's see, it's coming up on 6 years at the beginning of May. And
Nice.
I started out for health reasons right after college, just to try and detox myself from the college life. And then I slowly transitioned to ethical veganism because the more research you do into the movement and ideas, it's only inevitable you'll stumble across ethical reasons. Firmly believe that I wouldn't still be vegan if it wasn't for ethical reasons because I can look around the room, any room, and see lots of people are plenty healthy who eat animal products. So I think in
Right.
the long run,
Yes.
having that
Right.
ethical streak is important.
Yes. Right. I think it's more of a when you are vegan for health reasons, you tend to view it as a diet. When you're vegan for ethical reasons, I think it's a lifestyle and a belief system. But anyway, CPG says this has been so important for me to try to always remember. Unless you were born and raised vegan, you were there too. Doesn't that person who hasn't awakened yet, don't they deserve the opportunity to awaken? Don't Shouldn't we give them the benefit of the doubt? We and in her, what 10 stages of what happens when you stop eating animals, that's one of them, where you're like, oh, how do you not get this? What's wrong with you? But you have to take a step back and say, they don't get it. I didn't get it either for a while. It took me a while to get to that place. So I think, along with keeping compassion at the forefront as animal activists, we also have to remember, just try to put yourself in their place. You may not have been raised exactly the same way, but there was a time, unless you were born and raised vegan, you didn't get it either. So give those others the opportunity to find out what you found out. And we do that by planting seeds. And you can't force it. You have to just plant seeds. And nobody recognizes an idea until they're ready to see it. And if you try to force it, and especially if you approach it with hate, they're going to completely resist.
Yeah, I always have to think back and not judge too harshly other people because, like you said, I wasn't born this way. I was born eating steaks and ice cream, and I actually used to go hunting too. And now I don't do
Right.
any of that. And I can never sit there and say these people are terrible because they're not. They just don't. They're doing terrible things. Yes, a lot of the times, but that's not make them terrible people.
Exactly. Exactly. There, you have to learn how to separate those. But I think it's, specifically with animal advocates of South Central PA, let compassion be your compass. And I think it's so easy for us as vegans to, and of course, I'm speaking in general terms, to forget that hate can't drive out hate. It's only through love that things will change and people's hearts start to open. I think we're doing a disservice to those we are trying to serve by lashing out in that way. And I'm not saying, we all have those moments where we're like, oh, this is awful, and we all get to that point where it's hard to deal with, and you still get frustrated because you don't understand why people don't get it. And I think the best thing you can do is just take a step back, and whether it's a mantra or something else where you just remind yourself to you have that thought about someone and you want to lash out in hate, try to turn it around. And that's one of the easiest ways, specifically for me, I think, specifically with someone who is not vegan and is doing something, especially right in front of you. Just try to remind yourself that you were there once too. Or let's be more specific. What would how do you talk to that person? What would you say? There's always a way to talk to someone, whether you realize it or not. You've probably got some common ground. And instead of lashing out, especially online, or condemning that person or condemning people in general. I think that's been the hardest one for me, is to just hear the number of people that say, I hate people. That's just hard for me. But I think that even that, well, let's say somebody said that to me, how would I react? I mean, I don't recall anyone saying it to me recent. I try to remember the last time someone did, but typically I don't say anything. But I think I need to change that and say, wow, well, why do you feel that way? Just kind of ask questions, pick their brain, and maybe just make them aware of what they're actually saying.
Being vegan in a bubble and not being out there amongst other people advocating sometimes just simply through your lifestyle and general attitude is doing a disservice to the animals, because when you're out there modeling how you want people to act, whether it's showing compassion, your dietary habits, your clothing choices, whatever, that's a great way to help people make that decision and become awakened to the vegan movement and realize the consequences of their actions and attitudes.
Right. I mean, it's so tempting. Of course, I even find myself like, wonder what country has the most vegans. I should go there. Well, that's not helping anything. It's great to live in the vegan echo chamber, but again, we're not serving those we're not serving. I think that's a disservice to those we're trying to serve, the innocent animals. And the only way things are going to change is if those of us who, do get it now, plant seed. So you have to go out there. You have to be among people that you don't agree with. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's why sometimes I try and push myself to maybe go to that event or party or meeting where I know there won't be any vegan food or anyone there I really know too well. But I go there and I represent veganism in a way that is, I don't want to say appealing, but shows people, hey, you can be vegan and interact in the real world and be a part of all these circles and things. And it's not this alienating group of people who hide in their little villages in the middle of the woods eating iceberg lettuce and raw carrots.
That's good for you, Joe. Now, let me ask you this: that's interesting, because for me, and no one prompted me to do this. This is just how it became for me. I cannot, given a choice, I will not be where I know someone's eating animals. I turn down a lot of things because of that. And I don't like how isolating it is, but that's kind of where I'm at. It's all I can see is suffering.
I'm not trying to fault people who make that decision as well.
No,
Everyone
no,
can
I
do what
know.
they want to do, but well, a lot of times in my line of work too, I'm going to meetings and events and things like that too. So it's almost
Ooh,
thing
you
out
don't
of
have a choice.
necessity.
Yeah, right, right. Okay.
It's also a
Yeah,
good
that's
chance for
true.
me to get a little vegan advocacy or even just get in people's minds when I make sure that there's vegan options at the company holiday
Absolutely.
party too, because then they're talking about it, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. No, you know what? I think maybe as you said that, I just realized the reason I've done that is because I've been able to. I'm not forced to go to meetings in my line of work. I've been given options. Well, you don't have to go to this. So, yeah, well, I'm not going because I'm not going to sit next to somebody eating the corpse of an animal. And so I would say that if I was in your position, I probably would make the best of it and do the best and do the same thing that you are, and use it as an opportunity to, okay, I'm here, I'll plant some seeds. Do you ever end up like bringing your own vegan dishes to any of these?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll bring my own vegan sides or my own just vegan food if I know there's going to be nothing for me to eat.
Yeah.
And it only really gets it challenging when I have to organize an event with food at it, because then
Uh-huh.
I usually just wash my hands of that part if there's not all vegan food. I'll
Yeah.
tell
Right.
I tell
Yes.
my boss if I have to organize the food, we're having all vegan food or we're having nothing. So you should put someone
Good.
else in charge of that
I love
part.
it. That's great. Right. Again, exactly what I would probably do. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So that's a good perspective for me to have, because I've kind of questioned my choice on that. Like, is that the best thing to do? But because I know that in the past, I've been around other vegans who make a point of going to functions where they know there's no vegan food and bringing their own thing and impressing the heck out of people. And I think that's fantastic. But somewhere along the line, it developed into, for me, like, I look at that on the plate and all I see is suffering. And so then I'm like, well, I have a choice in this. I'm not going.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're in no position to take care of the animals either. So,
That's right.
kudos to you.
Oh, well, thank you. So anyway, like I said, I think it's right now, compassion for all, including all humans, is really important, because there's just so many people that I think everybody, although I have heard people actually say, "Oh, nothing's different for me. I'm retired, so I don't really care. Nothing's going on. Nothing's changed for me." Well, most of the rest of the world, that's not true. People have been affected by COVID-19, and this is really challenging for a lot of people in a lot of ways. I think it's more important than ever right now to remember compassion for all beings, including humans.
Even if you're not going through anything, you should at least have compassion for the people out there who are, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think the people who say, "Oh, nothing's changed for me," I don't think they even realize what they're saying, that can feel a little bit discouraging or alienating, isolating for someone who is having a hard time. I don't think necessarily people are, I just think they're not thinking about what they say. So that again, it's really important that we all practice compassion and choose our words thoughtfully and carefully right now, because yeah, I mean, I've been trying not to think about this, how this is all going to affect animals and what's happening to them if the conditions in their concentration camps is getting even worse. I don't know how it could in most cases, but you know what I mean? That's kind of troubling for me right now, is like, how bad is this going to get before we really get it to everyone concerned? That's a whole nother podcast, though, probably.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts, but I don't want to open up any more cans of worms because we're already over the half an hour mark.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have you on again sometime because it sounds like we could have a lot of great conversations.
That sounds great, Joe. I'd love to.
Hey, so like I said, we're coming up on the half an hour mark, so I don't like to take up too long on these. But any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, just, well, like I had said, please continue practicing compassion for all.
Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you for what you're doing with this podcast. Forward to talking again.
Yes, me too. And
All
if
right.
anyone out there would like to talk, you could send us an email at bekindpodcast@gmail.com or just message the Animal Advocates to South Central PA's Facebook page, and we'd be more than happy to get you on.